We need to understand that white supremacy is going to do what white supremacy feels it needs to do. The white supremacist believes in white supremacy. So the white supremacist is going to do what white supremacy commands it to do. We need to believe in black liberation. And they're going to call a moratorium on the protesting in Ferguson, Missouri. Because they say we need to get we need to contain this situation. We need to prevent any more people from getting harmed. Using the law for 150 years. Ever since the end of slavery. And what do we have to show for it? 150 years of racial terrorism. That's what we have to show for it. White supremacy uses all the weapons. Yes, they use the law. And I'm not saying don't use the law. But they use all the weapons in their arsenal. You need to use all the weapons in your arsenal. Let the attorneys be the attorneys. But since when does an attorney lead a battle on the battlefield? Y'all got attorneys leading the battle. Y'all got preachers leading the battle. You got somebody with a bullhorn leading the battle, leading the charge. But you got to understand their position. A lawyer believes in the law. A religious leader believes in their religion. We've had religion all throughout slavery. You've had religion. You were still slaves. After slavery, the entire time coming up out of slavery, 150 years, you still have 150 years of racial terrorism. You can't just lean on religion. You can't just lean on the law. These next clips are going to show you why it's important from the perspective of the white supremacists to keep you disarmed. And why it's important from the perspective of those that believe in black liberation to arm you.
Put it in some quantitative perspective. Before the Civil War began, there were 4 million African Americans, citizens enslaved in the United States. After the Civil War was over in 1865, there was 0. Okay? That is the most significant event in the history of African Americans in this country. Equally as important, as you heard earlier, the North might have been fighting to keep the Union together. The South was fighting for something called states' rights, but the African American U.S. colored troops were fighting for their freedom, as well as their manhood. Slavery had a way of emasculating the men in families when they couldn't protect their families against the cruel actions of the slaveholder. So part of this war was about reclaiming and recapturing our manhood. It made a difference when you had a uniform and you had a weapon and you went on to free your family. You got a different response than just saying a few kind words to some slaveholder when he saw that gun coming at him.
He was trying to implement the policies of the Indian Bureau and assimilate the Indians into white culture. He established an Indian police force, the first Indian police force on a reservation that I'm aware of. And he had a Captain George Sword who was in charge of these Indian policemen, and they enforced the laws on the reservation.
The first thing he did was to disarm the Chinese civil population right down to the last butcher knife. And no civil population with pitchforks can ever create a revolution to throw out machine guns. The consequence is that regime is fixed until such a time as the failure of its methods, failure of productivity, should cause the regime itself to change.